We are officially live. Just a thank you everybody for joining this Struct Sales Live. The ones of you who have been following us before, you know that we had quite an intensive Q4 where we did a lot of AI lives connected to sales marketing and HubSpot. What we're doing today is we have a guest from Younium, and we are going to talk about subscription management. We are going to talk about SaaS companies and the fact that you sometimes need to add additional systems and tools to HubSpot to make the most out of HubSpot as the CRM that it actually is. So today with me I have Joel from Younium. Welcome to the live. And before we jump into this, if the ones of you who are listening and watching this, add a comment so we can know who you are and which company you're from. It's always nice to know who's joining for this live. As always, when we're done, we're going to do 30 minutes. We're going to mix Q&As with a demo session of Younium after the introduction. So if you have any questions, please ask them as we go, or save them for the final 5 minutes of Q&A. And again, present yourselves in the chat pane. If you have questions, put them in the comments, and I'll ask them directly to you all as well. Perfect. Short intro, Joel, to Younium and to yourself.
Yes, thank you, Oliver, for having me here. This is the first time I'm on a LinkedIn Live, so exciting to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So I work as head of solutions at Younium. Stockholm-based company. I'm also based in Stockholm. Younium is a subscription management platform for B2B SaaS subscriptions, customer subscriptions, and we typically talk about having tailored a little bit more towards advanced subscriptions, meaning where you have a few different components or price drivers. We call it advanced, and trying to make it easy to manage those advanced subscriptions.
Okay. Is there any kind of in the SaaS industry? Are you only working with SaaS companies, or do you have other additional industries as well?
I would say SaaS and software companies. So some companies moving from the old perpetual license and moving into more recurring business. As always, there are some companies that are not super ICP, but we can manage those as well. But I think it's more like having of course subscriptions, having those, like I mentioned before, having a few different price drivers, and I think you get the most value out of it when you have a little bit more complex structure in terms of your subscriptions. I'll show you more in just a bit.
Yeah, and exactly. We're going to jump into pretty directly, actually, jump into a demo where you are going to show us how HubSpot and Younium are connected, and the key takeaways of why this is a good integration between the two systems. So, and we work a lot with, the reason why I wanted you to join for this live is because we work a lot with SaaS companies and specifically growth, like companies having growth goals, and they want to grow in a predictable and scalable way. And many of those are actually SaaS companies. Obviously, they have a really good product. They want to go to market with the product, and sometimes even HubSpot, which is a fantastic. I mean, we've been working with HubSpot and onboarding clients for 10 years now, since 2014. But sometimes even HubSpot, which is also kind of one of their goals, is to have a really, really good CRM with, like, you have open APIs, so you can connect any kind of tool and system. I think in the marketplace today, we have roughly 700 or 800 tools out of the box, so to say, which you can connect to HubSpot. So it is a really, really good customer platform with a really, really good opportunity to connect tools and systems like Younium directly to HubSpot. So you mentioned SaaS companies. Like, tell us about what would be not a good fit for Younium. Do you have any of those examples? When would you not need Younium as
no, but I think when you have a more sort of streamlined offering, let's say you only sell a $99 a month subscription, that's, I mean, it can be handled, but I don't think you get as much value of it as needed. Also, I mean, we want to offer the ability to, during the life cycle of a subscription, like a lot of things happening. So that is one of the key strengths as well, controlling those or keeping control over those changes, both from a like billing and financial perspective, but of course also from metrics to be able to measure in the right way, but also have sort of the full transparency during the whole life cycle of the subscription. So if you work with like negotiated deals, you have constant changes or recurring changes to the existing contracts during the life cycles, upsell, downsells, etc. Then Younium is a good fit for sure.
Okay, cool. So we're going to look at obviously the integration between Younium and HubSpot. We are going to touch on topics like automating SaaS flows, improve efficiency from deal to cash, subscription management, maybe a bit of reporting, and also like for the traditional SaaS reporting, MRR, ARR, ACV, etc., etc. Everybody in this pond knows everything about this, so everybody feels right at home if you're a SaaS company. So I'm thinking let's jump into Younium and give us a walkthrough and a kind of the best nuggets on the integration between HubSpot and Younium and what you see as the best use and maybe a few best practice cases as well. And the ones of you watching this, please add, like Jonas and Emily did, they presented themselves. If you have questions, put it in the comments. I'll ask them to you as we go as well.
Yeah, let's jump in and just to set the scene a little bit. I think if you picture Younium in the landscape between, we have CRM on the one side initiating the deal. We want to, you mentioned that, Oliver, enable a more automated quote to cash process, right? So connect the CRM to Younium. Younium will be the source of truth for subscriptions, right? And then also in the other end, connect to a financial platform so that you get your financials right, both in terms of revenue recognition, in terms of billing, etc., etc. So I would say that's the typical setup: CRM, Younium, and then the ERP.
And that's a really good input, because a lot of the clients we talk with, some of them want to do everything in HubSpot. So they want to send invoices, they want to do the settlements, they want to do basically everything from HubSpot. And I normally tell them that you can do a lot of things, but it's not a solution where you can do exactly everything. And subscriptions and invoicing and keeping track of everything is one of those cases where you actually might need an additional tool like Younium. So that's a good case.
Yeah, and I think, in some cases, I'm sure, so the easier use case, having like a recurring invoicing for something, I think that's the easy part. But then when it comes to changes during the contract, the lifetime of the contract, then it gets a lot harder, and you typically end up with a lot of manual work. Many of our customers, I would say, comes from, you manage everything in Excel spreadsheets and do a manual input into the finance system. And at some point, the number of customers or, the time you spend on it gets too much, right? And then you need some place to handle that with more automation. I'll share my screen here, and then I'll show you a little bit what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There we go. So just starting now, I know it's a lot of numbers, and we won't go through everything, even though I like the kind of details, digging into the details. But just give a brief overview, because this is how you build out the order. What we call the order is the subscription, and that will sort of live through the whole life cycle of the contract with the customer, right? Which means that any type of change will go in here, will drive changes to your metrics. It will affect the invoicing, and then you also get, now this is the version 3 of the orders. You get the constant traceability between the versions and see what's happening over time, right? And this is the configuration on the order is what will trigger the billing. So the invoices that we send to the customer, which in turn will also end up as the revenue recognition and the metrics, as I mentioned before. So the configuration that you have down here is where we talk about advanced subscriptions. Like you want to be able to, for each and every customer, have not necessarily have a different configuration, but have the ability to have the specific terms for that specific customer, and put that on the order, and then sort of leave it there and let the system automatically handle your terms. How do we build it? Is it annual billing? How do we recognize the revenue based on this? So it's sort of a strong financial foundation as well, where you have the ability to have flexibility in your terms, but having the sort of the financials and the billings and the metrics automated based on that order.
So in terms of looking at what you're showing now, the different products and the different like contract terms and billing periods and discounts and products added to products and calculations and stuff, what is the most common mistake companies do when they actually should have invested in Younium, but they're trying to do it by themselves? Is there any kind of that's not very complicated, we can do it in-house, we can manage it by ourselves? Where do you see the most value for clients to actually decide this is where they need to get in touch with Younium to save time and the headache and everything? Is there is there a good example of any kind of metric or experience where they actually would be very see big value in starting to look at Younium as a tool?
Yeah, but I think a little bit back to what I mentioned before. I mean, the easy use case, just to create the first order, have a recurring billing, it's 1,000 euros a month, and we should invoice that every quarter. I mean, that's the easy part. But as soon as you start making changes to that, making additions, and then you want to do like prorated revenue recognition based on those changes, and then all of a sudden you get a credit and you have to discount, and all that builds up. And if you try to do that manually or try to solve it in a spreadsheet, or I believe if you try to solve that in HubSpot in this scenario, then it will be hard, or you will end up with a lot of manual work anyways, right? So then you have a system that can automate this for you, all these different pieces. And end of the day, I mean, having control over the subscriptions is sort of when you value your company, you have to have control over this, right? You have to know your metrics. You have to know each and every contract and the changes over time, right? So I would say keeping control over the full subscription lifecycle. That's
who is normally the buyer on the client side? Is it the CFO? Is it the CEO? Is it the sales manager? Who's actually investing?
I would say CFO, or finance teams, typically driven from there. Yes, and typically finance teams working in Younium, right? And that sort of brings us a little bit into like what when it comes from HubSpot and the handover between the different systems, why would we need a connection between those two? Because I would argue that the sale is not completed just because you get the signature on the paper, right? Because you have to connect the flows and you have to get paid for the contract that you have. Otherwise, it's not worth anything, right? So that's what we try to solve with a connection between HubSpot and Younium. That we end up with what we see here. You end up with an order that the finance team can keep on billing and make changes to, but try to automate that in an easy fashion. So just jumping into HubSpot quickly a little bit. So we work with the standard objects in HubSpot. So if we have a struct sales lead here and a new deal. So basically connecting the product library in HubSpot with the product library in Younium, and on your deal you select. Let's do a few of these. The products that they bought, right? The sales representative will work in HubSpot, add this, and then when it's time for quoting, we are a little bit agnostic as how to send the quotes. If it's HubSpot quotes or some third-party app. I'm sure you know more about that, Oliver. Save that.
So basically, you're using the product library in HubSpot, which is like out of the box included when you have a HubSpot license. And then you mentioned the quotes. So some of the clients, for the ones of you listening who might not know, there is a built-in quote functionality in HubSpot. You can use quotes directly from HubSpot. You can use tools like GetAccept, PandaDoc. There are a bunch of additional integration. That doesn't matter, right? If you want to integrate to Younium, you don't have any preferred way of quoting.
No, I would say what we need in the end of the day is the products connected to the Younium products, and then there are some like additional properties that are not HubSpot standard, like what we call initial term. How long is the contract running until it renews the first time, and the start date of the contracts and so forth. But in terms of quoting, when the deal is signed, right, that's when you want to push it over to Younium and you want to activate the order and start billing. So you basically build out the deal. Once it's signed, you have this create order button down here. Hopefully we filled out everything correct, and then we can send it over to Younium. And then it should be created as a draft order, because typically what we want is someone on the finance side to do a final controlling before we can start invoicing. Do we have all the invoice details? Do we have the right references, etc., etc. So this is the one that we looked at in HubSpot. We have the three different products here, and basically if nothing is to be changed, you can just activate the order, which means that it's available to go into like the standard invoicing process in Younium. So typically run an invoice batch for all contracts that should be invoiced now in May, and then you push that either directly from Younium to the end customer or through the ERP or finance system.
Okay. And do you need any specific license? Because as you might know, to be able to manage recurring revenue, as one example in HubSpot, you need a enterprise license. If you were to manage recurring revenue using Younium, would you then still need an enterprise license in HubSpot, or could you basically use the product database and send it over to Younium? Because you'd definitely want to report on this and pull reports. How are you reporting in Younium, or can you do it in HubSpot?
So yes and no and yes, but so you can do reporting in Younium. So we have some out of the box metrics in our insights module. So typically like contracted value, MRR, like standard SaaS metrics, right? So you can pull it from there. And I would say we have the ones that are the typical. Then of course every customer do some of their specific measurement that we don't support, but then we have a reporting engine where you can pull the data from the system. But the standard SaaS metric is there, so you can use this for reporting, right? But then I think on the other end, you need and want some visibility in HubSpot as well. So there are a few places where we provide the data back into the HubSpot. So one is on this Younium account card, where you have like summarized statistics or metrics. You can also look at the details of the existing orders and invoices. So this is like an iframe that shows the real-time data. So as soon as you change anything in Younium, you will see it here down on the product level, see the invoice status. So this is more for visibility and knowledge about like what's the latest for this customer. This of course then you cannot build based on this data. You cannot build reports and workflows, etc., because then you need it stored in a property. But to that point, we can also, and for this you need a enterprise license, right? For the standard parts, you don't need it, but to be able to work with these custom objects, you need an enterprise license, if I understand it correctly. But then we can sync back data into this Younium order and order charge object. So there you basically have the same information that we just looked at in Younium. So the order data, when is the starting, how long is it running before it renews, and then also on the left-hand side, the associated charges, what we call charges, or the product line items on the order. And with this data, you can do lists and reporting and campaigns and whatever you do in HubSpot, right? But this part requires the enterprise license.
Okay.
Maybe one more thing to show before we go into look at the if there are any questions. What also we quite recently added, because I think one challenge that many companies have is like when it comes, so the initial sale, right? But then what happens at an upsell or a change? You can do that directly in Younium, go in and create a change order. But then the sales team says we don't want to be going to Younium, right? To do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what we can do from this order and invoices view, we have the latest information here, and this is the trick, right? Because if you have a recurring, or if you have a subscription, then the upsell is not necessarily from 0 to 5 users. It may be from 20 to 25 users. So then we have to know like what are the current values of the contract. So then you can initiate a change deal from this data, and this is basically pulling the latest information from the contract, from the order in Younium. So this enables doing this in HubSpot, and you can create the deals directly in HubSpot, similar to like you do. And this can be adding product or changing the existing.
So basically you're creating an upsell deal from within HubSpot, basically from within the iframe when you're in HubSpot. So you don't need to log into Younium as a sales rep to do an upsell. You just click create upsell deal. It is then registered, and you will have a new, for example, if you have an upsell pipeline in HubSpot, you will see it there, and this will then be sent to Younium and synced.
Exactly.
That's
and connected to the old order. And then it will automatically trigger, do we need to sell invoice more for a specific product, or based on these changes, and from which date, etc.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Because that's always something we're discussing with clients in terms of like, do we have a new sales pipeline, an upsell pipeline? Are we using the same pipeline and using properties? Could you do that as well? So for example, if you create an upsell deal, can you use a property in HubSpot then to make it stay in the same sales pipeline, but then tag things? So basically, if you use custom objects, you could probably do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
I think from a demo perspective, I think those are the sort of main things I wanted to show today. There are, of course, a lot more to it, both in Younium and in HubSpot.
Are you, and again, I asked this in the beginning, like if you're sitting now at a company where you're having like few challenges in terms of subscription management and all the things we've seen now, what are the do you have what are the 3 questions you need to ask yourself and then decide, yes, I need to do something additional apart from the recurring revenue reporting and features in HubSpot? Like what are the examples where you can check those boxes? You definitely need to talk with Younium and set up a more advanced setup than you have in HubSpot. Do you have any kind of qualification criteria when you meet new clients? Let's say they're using HubSpot, they have a sales enterprise license, they have recurring revenue in HubSpot. When do they need to think about maybe adding Younium to the mix?
I think it's more like, what are the pains today? Can you solve the full subscription lifecycle within HubSpot? I would recommend probably not try to build it within HubSpot. HubSpot is a great tool, and we use it ourselves.
I know.
But I would argue it's not built for a full-blown subscription business, right? So if you feel pains with managing like the recurring revenues and the revenue recognition today, getting all the data without manual interaction into into your finance system, then you should probably look at some sort of middle layer subscription management system. I think also when it comes to, typically customer comes to us and when it comes to reporting, you don't get all, especially if we look at, we want to have contracted values, like what are we signing today, but when it's starting later, right? So you want to distinguish that compared to the ARR or the MRR. If you cannot capture that in a out-of-the-box way, then you probably need to look at a subscription management tool.
And in terms of connecting Younium to a finance tool or an ERP or something, do you have out-of-the-box solutions? Do you recommend, like if you're using these ERPs or these invoicing companies, that would be a better fit for Younium than others.
It's same thing as for the CRM side. We have a few selected connectors that we have built and maintained. So I would say the larger ones on the market for some bigger companies, and then we have more local options as well. So I would say look at the Younium homepage and look at our connectors and integrations there. But I would say the flow, you can run your full accounts receivable process in Younium as well. So it's not required that you have a connection to, or that you build an integration to your finance platform. But if we do have a connector in place, then most companies use that connector, and there are some pros and cons where you put the accounts receivable. That we could talk another hour.
Definitely. And where do you? So I sometimes read, and when I talk to you, you talk about enterprise. Enterprise. Is it more enterprise clients you're looking for the obvious reason that if you have complex ways of invoicing and a lot of different products and stuff, is it more enterprise? And are you regionally based, like in the Nordics or globally? What's your plans moving forward, and what are you covering today in terms of, if you could say, like size of company, or let's say it's a SaaS company, do you need to have at least, like, if you can measure by employees, or how do I need to think about getting in touch with you as a company?
Yeah, I would say typically the size. I mean, we have sizes from 2 million euro ARR up to 100 million or over 100 million euro ARR. So it's quite a span. So if you're somewhere in between there, then for sure, I think you're in a need to start looking at something like this, right? And especially if you're growing. It will be at some point too painful to manage this in like the spreadsheets or the finance system directly. Okay,
perfect. We have a perfect. I'm gonna do like this. So we have a question, and it says, before we end, we have 3 minutes left. So what top tips would you give a company just starting to use the Younium and HubSpot integration? And what do many of your clients automate in HubSpot based on Younium properties? That's a good question.
It's a good question. Tips, just starting out. I mean, I think it's making sure, because you can do some customized values, making sure that the finance team on the other end have all the information that they need when they receive this order. So it's not like you automate the flow of data, but then they don't have all the information at hand to start building this. And that's what we want to achieve. We want sales to do their sales part, right, and then push it over to finance, and finance to make sure that they do their things. So I think that's the key. Figure out what are the information required, right?
And in terms of these kind of tools like Younium, do you have any other types of companies or tools like competitors? You don't need to mention them by name, but what is similar tools where they can't really do as much as you can, but they're trying? Like, are there any other tools out there instead of making a mistake and finding something in between HubSpot and Younium, which is not that good? What kind of tools and solutions have you seen out there that you would like to kind of point a warning to?
I think it's make sure that you sort of can fit your products into the product library, and enable it to connect it to any type of quoting tool, and then look at this full process, because like we mentioned before, the first sale could be quite easy. It's a recurring fee, but then what happens after that, right? Can you measure on it? Do you have visibility in HubSpot? And can you do these changes without creating some manual activities around the change order or the upsell deals?
Good, perfect. Thank you so much. Where can we find you and Younium if we want to talk subscription based solutions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, either you go to younium.com, to our homepage. There's a lot of good material in there, and you can also request to see more, and you want to discuss more. And of course, connect on LinkedIn if you want to send questions directly to any of our employees. That's absolutely fine as well.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know if we have any more questions. I don't think we do. Again, this will be recorded, so the ones of you who have attended, if you want to give this as a tip to one of your colleagues, just share this, and also please follow Structures on LinkedIn if you want to get invitations to upcoming lives in the areas of marketing, sales, and growth. Thank you for joining again, and hope to see you all soon again. Thank you, Joel, as well.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.